We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Honestly, like Jake and I were kind of talking off stream a little bit here and trying to piece together what just happened in week 4. We figured, hey, we might as well just come back and see what everyone else thinks in the chat. So Jake Ciely with us. Obviously, you know him from The Athletic. You know him from obviously being our weekly guest here to walk through some first look activities, but also a little bit of waiver wire stuff. Jake, how was your week 4 overall, my friend?
Yeah, I told you before we came on the show, I netted 75 cents. So I guess the only good thing about it is that I didn't come out in the red. I mean, that should be the takeaway, right?
That's a win. A lot of weeks, man. Sometimes isn't it? Don't you wish there was like a button where you could just like surrender at like 2 p.m. in some weeks?
So have you ever played ESPN Streak for the Cash? It's the free thing. You can actually forfeit picks if you want to move on to the next one. And what? Yeah, if you don't want, it's free. It's the one where you kind of just try to pick the most correct games in a row each month. And if you don't like how something's going, like you pick the baseball game and your team's losing 9-0 to the third, you can forfeit and go to the next pick.
That's amazing. I wish we had that on everything. Honestly, there's probably been a couple weeks already where I would love to have just like forfeited. Maybe you get like half your buy-ins back or something like that if you forfeit. I think that would be awesome. But yeah, man, it was
even 25%. I think I'd still take that sometimes.
We would take it. I'll say this: like we just kind of went through one of my lineups in the 5-5-5. I think that this week overall was like not great personally, but then obviously the lineup that I do with Peter Overzet and Michael Leone. Big win, won the 1,500 for 50K. So we kind of split that between the three of us. And so, yeah, that's a nice start to the season to have that little buffer. It would take a lot for us to really screw that up, but I don't know. We'll see. We're thinking about playing the Thunderdome this week. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. You're not including me, right? I don't have to take part of this.
Yeah, you're buying in, right? You're in.
I would be raging out more than I normally rage out. People might want to just see that. Maybe I should just live video it.
I wouldn't mind seeing some Jake Ciely tilt. We might have to bring you on a guest at some point.
I was gonna say, Barkley, she's underneath my feet right now. I have to like send her away to my parents' house so she's not like cowering in the corner.
Yeah, good stuff, man. All right, so we might as well jump into it. I guess I can put that behind me for at least a little bit. It's nice to celebrate, but also like on a Monday, we need to dive into this stuff, man. There's a ton of stuff that I want to talk to you about. So I think that overall this week, the pricing is interesting. I'll say that. So if we just start at the quarterback position for week 5, I know you've kind of taken
I want to ask you a question.
Let's hear it.
Before you even start, I want to ask you the question before we get going. Why is Dak Prescott still 7,400?
He is insanely expensive.
How is he? He is, but how is he not the most expensive quarterback?
I mean, he's just going to keep throwing for 500 yards every game. He should be, 82? Something like that? Where would you price him?
So Lamar Jackson was just 8,100 last week, and now he's 79, obviously, because we don't have much from him that was worthy of being 8,000 again. But we're talking about the number 3 fantasy quarterback from last year, that being Dak Prescott. Talking about the number 1 so far this year, the last 3 games has been putting up, even at 8,500, still 3.5, almost 4 times value. I don't understand how you don't just plug it. Like, this is the first thing I did. I put him in. I put the only person you can trust, because 1 week it's Gallup, 1 week it's Lamb, I put him in, I put Cooper in, and then I tried to figure out my lineup from there.
I don't know, man. Like I'm a Dallas truther, like officially, like throughout the entire offseason, all of that stuff. Like they haven't really won a lot of games, but it's been fun for fantasy. I don't know if a guy that really isn't in the same tier of Lamar Jackson, like Josh Allen, Kyler Murray on the ground, like can you ever price him like all the way up there? Like I think 7,400 is about right, personally. Actually, is that a bad take?
Under. All right. I know it's like I still feel it's under. I think he deserves to be with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. And honestly, if we're talking pure fantasy, I know you don't get the rushing of Lamar Jackson, but we're talking fantasy, period. And as of to date, he has been worth more than both of them.
That's fair. I'll say this. He's 8,700 on FanDuel, so he's right up there. He's more expensive than Josh Allen. He's more expensive than Kyler, all of those guys. So he's only 200 cheaper than Lamar Jackson. I don't know if you can really do much more than that.
Yeah, that is certainly. So, 300. Oh, wait, Lamar Jackson? Patrick Mahomes. Sorry.
Mahomes, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
I was gonna say you get 500 savings on Dak Prescott, and that's the thing. Like, do you really want to go to Josh Allen for 100 more? Actually, Dak Prescott's been better, especially the last 3 games. Are you really going to drop down to Kyler Murray at 200 cheaper? Because the thing with Kyler Murray is he's attempting like 3 yards a pass.
Yep.
Like, if it's not for the passing touchdowns, it actually would have been a miserable week, even with his rushing ability. And then you get down to all the dice rolls, which everybody from the Watson, Goff, Minshew, right? Like, all these guys maybe have one 30-point game to their name, maybe, and maybe not even that.
Yeah, I think that's like what's different this year. What feels like on DraftKings is there seems to be like a very clear tier gap between some of the top guys that are giving us rushing, some of the guys that are not. Like, there seemed like there was weeks last year where we could play guys like Kyler Murray, play guys like even just Josh Allen for like, I don't know, 6,700, 6,800. It's like they didn't move their price. They weren't throwing touchdowns like they are this year, but now these guys are priced up so far that it is a little bit different scenario. I think that last week, one of the guys that stood out right away, obviously, was Fitzpatrick. How do you feel about the Fitzpatrick play overall? Because I like, there's some people complaining about it. He still threw for 300 yards, ran for a touchdown, ran for almost 50 yards. Like, what do you want for a guy that's 5,400? Like, I was totally fine with the Fitzpatrick play. You got bailed out at the end. I understand that.
Right.
But where did you land on that?
I landed on you lucked out, so to speak. And I'm not saying I had some Fitzpatrick, so I'm not saying that you lucked out as like you guys who did it. But you mentioned it. You kind of got bailed out. But the rushing is not what you expect from that. But I think people are just frustrated because they wanted 350, 400 passing yards and 3-4 passing touchdowns. And for what you got for Fitzpatrick's price, I don't think you can complain that much at all. I'm with you. I don't understand the frustration. I think it's just a perception. Everybody always wants the 40-point game. Everybody always wants the running back that, put up numbers like Kamara every single week, and you're not going to get that. That's why fantasy football is fantasy football.
People like to complain, Jake. If you didn't know that, they like to complain about a lot of things. Quarterback is one that I think this week overall, like, I'm not seeing a guy that seems like he's like drastically underpriced. Like, are we just going to go back to the Deshaun Watson train? And this one at 6,900, like, he's not necessarily cheap. Obviously, the play calling has changed there, which is definitely not optimal. I wish I would have looked a little bit deeper into that news item before lock this week. But Joe Burrow at 6K is one that kind of stands out to me a little bit, but he's playing against Baltimore. So, like, what are we doing past this top tier this week, Jake?
So I'm staying away from Watson the same reason I was off of Burrow last week. And Burrow still had 300 yards, but he only had the one touchdown. It was an okay day, but it's what I go back to with the Jaguars. They're dog crap slow. And that's your concern, is that even if they're scoring and even if they're vulnerable, a lot of times you just don't have the same snap count as you do in other contests like the Giants and the Rams. Even that one, there's two of the highest paced teams, and the Giants are just so piss poor, pitiful. And I don't know what was going on with the Rams that they couldn't do anything, because when they wanted to, they did it. It just seemed like it almost felt like McVay was like, let's throw out our bag of tricks because we know it's the Giants and see what we can get for maybe week 15 and surprise somebody. But I'm looking for pace, and for Watson, now that he's playing Jacksonville, I'm off the pace. Houston is not the greatest pace. So, yeah, I've been looking. If I'm going down, it's going to be Burrow. You know the risk with Burrow against Baltimore, but what do you know about this? Tons of snap potential, tons of scoring potential in this game. If it goes belly up, it's not going to be because Burrow threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's because he's going to throw for 302 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So I'm looking at either that or, he's kind of Minshew. You know how much I love Minshew, but he's in that pace of play game.
Yep.
I would rather just go down to Burrow for 200 cheaper.
I'm with you. I think Burrow's interesting. Some clear options to pair with him for sure. I'll ask you this. Is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to start this week? Because at 5,600, I'm not scared to run him back in San Francisco if he is going to start. I guess there's always that, scare that he might just get benched at this point. They're going to probably give the keys away to the rookie at some point. But you think Fitzpatrick has at least another week in him?
So this is something, and I'll give credit to Chris Harris I had on my podcast, and I watched a lot of film too. And, it really, I don't know why, I guess it's similar to what I do, like DFS blind spots. It's just something you're watching and it just doesn't click in your mind. And I've been watching the Dolphins, and, Preston Williams has done nothing this year. And he brought up on the podcast, and now he's not the one who said the second part, but the first part he said, the reason Preston Williams isn't doing well is because they're running like a West Coast offense, and Preston Williams doesn't fit. That's why you see Isaiah Ford starting to make some noise. So you have Devontae Parker, Isaiah Ford, the tight end. Well, if you're running that kind of offense, why did you run that offense with Fitzpatrick? Maybe because you're planning to switch to Tua. So I don't know if Fitzpatrick is out there. I think that they are thinking of starting it, and that's what they're doing. They're starting to develop this offense for the switch to Tua. And so if Fitzpatrick's out there, I'm kind of off him unless it's like a great situation like last week. I know San Francisco is very vulnerable right now, but I would have to see potential shootout opportunity, and I don't feel like a lot of weeks, the San Francisco really has that.
I'm going to throw two names
Unless
at you.
Garoppolo's back. Are you assuming Garoppolo's back?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was assuming overall, because I think that could change things with that game for sure.
All right.
Yeah. I'm going to throw two names at you, Jake, on the cheaper side. Are we done with Daniel Jones? He's 5,400. He'll sling it. You know that the game script's going to be there. And then Baker Mayfield against Indy at 5,700. Are we going back to that well after a decent week? I don't really know what to think about this Indy team overall. You can even throw Sam Darnold in that mix against Arizona in an up-tempo game. Some of these like sub 6K guys, I don't know if there's a clear standout for me just yet.
Sam Darnold might not even play. He might not even be healthy. So and I don't want to risk that. And I don't want to risk Sam Darnold, period. And the reason I laughed is because there's no way on earth I'm risking Daniel Jones. If you win your tournament out there playing Daniel Jones, kudos to you. You got more bigger brass balls than I do, because I've watched Daniel Jones play. I don't care that he's playing the Cowboys. I don't care if he's playing freaking Old Dominion. I wore this hat for Travis Fulgham. I don't care if he was playing Old Dominion. I'm not touching Daniel Jones right now. If you've watched Daniel Jones, he looks worse than pretty much anybody not named Trubisky. And actually, Trubisky was playing a little bit better for the first 2 weeks. I don't trust Daniel Jones at all. I don't trust the offensive line at all. I don't trust that team at all. There's no way I'm rolling him out there even against the Cowboys. Just feels like the trap. I feel like there's going to be so many people on Daniel Jones because of the Cowboys defense and because Daniel Jones does run that there's no way I'm even touching it anyway.
Man, he's looked absolutely terrible. I don't know. That's one that I'm not willing to have a firm stance on a Monday. I definitely want to look at that one a little bit deeper, but I'm with you. It's scary. It's very scary. I don't care about who the matchup is. I don't know what you can do with that.
So Emory Hunt, I mentioned his name a lot as one of the best scout minds, and we were texting back and forth. And for the fact that he backs up what I say, it always makes me feel better. I said the Giants need to do what the Bengals are doing Joe Burrow. Give him 1-2 reads, find the open guy, and go. Stop making him think, because he's already locking into one receiver, and that's the problem. And so I don't think until things are fixed, and I don't know if Jason Garrett's going to change that. And if Jason Garrett continues to run his offense, I think Daniel Jones might be one of the biggest busts of the year, and the Giants might be actually considering drafting a quarterback in this draft because Gettleman's going to be gone.
Oh, man. Can you imagine they draft another one after what they gave up for him? That'd be crazy. So let's talk about running back, Jake. We'll move on. I think that overall, it just sucks not having Christian McCaffrey on the slate, so I'm just trying to figure out who my next guy was. I thought it was Kamara last week. He just doesn't get in the end zone and kind of underperforms relative to his salary. But at the top this week, Zeke still 7,800 against this Giants team. I don't know. Do we just play Zeke and Pollard and just take all the touchdowns and all the rushing that they're probably going to have in this spot against the Giants? I don't know. 7,800 for Zeke seems like a great price. Maybe he's priced at that point because he didn't get in the end zone last week. I don't know. This seems like a pretty cheap price tag in this matchup. What do you think about Zeke at the top?
I do like Zeke a lot, and I saw that name stand out immediately, especially because I looked him up, and, what do we got? 27, 23, 18, 22 in his games, and people are complaining about his production. Like, I understand he hasn't been as efficient, as exciting as you would want him to be, that being Ezekiel Elliott and his own talent. And he's not as exciting as you would want him to be because we watched Kamara doing what he's doing with the Saints. But are you really going to complain about 20 points a game? Well over 20 points a game. He's averaging 22.6, and you don't have McCaffrey. You don't have Kamara on the slate. You don't have Barkley on the slate. He just seems, the fact that he's not even in the 8,000 range, that if you can find a way to get Zeke in there, you do it. I mean, I don't think I know we're going to talk about the next person I have on my list at some point, but if you can get Zeke in there, he seems like the one that just stands out to me.
Who's the next person on your list then, Jake? I'll let you take the reins here. It's week 5. Let's have a co-host experience here today.
I made the scoff face because it's Kareem Hunt. Just free space. I know he's 6,500, so it's not the real free space, but he's 6,500 for the free space and the fact that he's a top 10 running back, top 5 potential every single week with no Nick Chubb. I mean, that's the easy. If you don't put Kareem Hunt in your line, I don't even care if he's 70% owned this week, which would be an absurd number, but I don't care how owned he is. He has to be out there.
I will probably have Kareem Hunt on every single team, and I'm willing to say that on a Monday. That's how good of a play he is at 6,500. I was going to ask you if you had a specific lean between Kareem Hunt, 6,500, and Mike Davis at 6,400. I mean, do we just play both of these guys? Like, again, I'm willing to take the L on Mike Davis a couple weeks ago, and I didn't think he would walk in and see this huge role in the passing game that he has seen. He's playing against Atlanta, probably a better matchup than Kareem Hunt if you care about that sort of thing. But I think both of these guys are locked and loaded at the mid 6K range. I think that's where I'm going to kind of live this week.
Yeah, so mid 6K range. So I have 3 running backs in my lineup that I already built, and I don't. This. I have a feeling I'm just gonna keep this lineup. I'm not gonna give the entire lineup away, but I have Hunt. My number 2 is Mike Davis, and my number 3 at 5K is Antonio Gibson. 5K seems like the DraftKings people said, maybe we don't trust him. That seems slow to react, for my opinion.
That could be at 5K. Like, is he necessary though? I guess we'll have to see what type of value we have in some of these other positions. But I'm with you. I think he's interesting.
I mean, how many times are you going to get somebody at 5K that's 15 touches and has been productive 3 straight weeks and has only been getting more work? I mean, this is the same thing we were saying last week about Myles Gaskin, who had a letdown game.
This is why I don't play these guys that are only projected for 15 touches. You know what I mean? I don't have to mess around with that. I think these other guys are in a tier by themselves, obviously a little bit more expensive. This 6K range is just so nice overall. Like, can we go back to Joe Mixon in the spot against Buffalo? Like, he's still 6,300. We saw the upside that he still carries. I don't know. I love this range.
Baltimore?
Yeah, against Baltimore. What did I say?
So, Buffalo.
Oh, yeah,
so
Baltimore.
And I wanted to make that clear because I have hesitancies. And so there's 2 reasons here. One is you get the immediate reaction for what happened last week. So you're going to have people flock to him in general because, hey, he turned things around. Everything's exciting. It's the first game where he's vastly outsnapped Gio in the passing game and running routes. If you told me this was going to be the new norm, and hey, Zach Taylor got his head out of you-know-where and started using Joe Mixon that way, then Joe Mixon, until he's in the 7,000 range, needs to be in your lineup. I just don't trust that might have been a one-off week situation. And what if it is? It's the Ravens. And that's why I bring that up, is because if it was Buffalo, maybe I'd actually feel a little bit better. But the Ravens, and all of a sudden this game is high pace from the get-go. Maybe they fall behind real quick, 10-0, 14-0. And then we start seeing stupid Gio out there. That's the frustration. That's why I'm a little hesitant on Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I feel fortunate that last week, like, we played Mixon on our Tilt Space team, which was great. But I like the idea of getting different at running back when it is someone that we can project for a lot of volume and basically no ownership whatsoever. I think a ton of people are going to be going to Mixon, even in the spot against Baltimore. I'll preface it the right way this time. I guess the last guy, I mean, Jake, I'm sure you're just flooded with the same type of people. Everyone wants to talk about Mixon. Everyone wants to talk about Kenyan Drake. So what's your official stance on Kenyan Drake? I was a little bit scared to see Chase Edmonds continue to kind of eat into this passing role that Drake used to have, I guess. I don't know if I can do it again, man. I've been there for a couple weeks now on some tournaments, and I think I'm ready to jump off the train.
You see this right here? This is me smiling on my victory lap on Kenyan Drake.
I'll wear that.
0 ownership all 4 weeks of the Kenyan Drake. I don't know how anybody could get on the Kenyan Drake train at this point. And you know what? It goes back to last year. And I still think look, I didn't expect Kenyan Drake to be this bad, even taking a victory lap. I didn't expect him to be this bad, to be clear. If he has a week where he scores 2 touchdowns and goes off, he still has that in him. The problem is he wasn't, since we talked week 1, not being involved in the passing games. Chase Edmonds is. You watch them run. At times, Edmonds looks better. It's really going to come down to, is he ever going to get 20 touches to have a game like that? And then if he does, somebody's going to hit and probably win $1 million when they go out there and trust Drake one more time. But I don't see how you do. Even at the price dropping, I still don't see how you do. The one person I want to circle back, you skipped over one name, and he hasn't played yet this week, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 6,800. He's in that same 6K range that you're talking about.
That's interesting. What do you think his ownership's going to be like in this spot?
I think it's going to be a lot to do with what happens tonight. Like, if he goes bananas tonight, then people are going to smash him in there like they did after week 1. If he has kind of more of the week 2 outing, I think you might be able to get a decent ownership, as in lower ownership on him.
That's interesting, because everyone was like kind of falling over themselves to play him last week until the game got postponed. So that's one to monitor for sure at that same price point, man. I think that's where we're going to live this week at running back. So wide receiver, I think that one thing that's interesting overall, Kelvin Ridley, 7,500. So I guess we'll see kind of what happens in the game tonight. Both him and Julio are expected to play in this game on Monday Night Football. So what do you think about Kelvin Ridley at 7,500 against Carolina? We'll move forward a little bit. I mean, he's only literally 400 cheaper than DeAndre Hopkins at this point. I prefer Hopkins probably in a vacuum, but curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think if you looked at the performance on a per game, and so far has been Ridley. I mean, you see the fantasy points per game right there on the numbers, but of course he hasn't played week 4 yet. It'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. I gotta tell you, even if they both, like, let's say Calvin Ridley comes out tonight with 100 and a touchdown, and Julio has his 130 and 0 touchdowns, like Julio does, and why everybody hates him. If you're gonna give me a $700 discount on Julio Jones, I'm gonna take Julio Jones every single time, because it's the 130 and 0 touchdowns, which people get so ticked off about, that we talk about all the time, which usually comes on 6 or 7 catches, and he's getting you 20 points. Why are people upset about 20 points? Yet, Ridley's getting the touchdowns. At some point, as good as Ridley's been, let's even just say he outperforms Julio this year. Let's put that as a fact. Calvin Ridley so far has touchdown regression coming. Like, nobody's scoring 2 touchdowns per game. Nobody's scoring. This isn't Randy Moss. Let's be clear. So I think that's what we would be looking at here.
You love Julio. I'll say that because you defended him last week, but then I was about to just rip you for that, but he's 6,800, Jake. Like, he is 6,800 on DraftKings.
Well, he didn't play last week.
I'm just saying, when's the last time you saw Julio Jones at 6,800 at any point, right? Like, I take the touchdown thing completely out of the conversation. Calvin Ridley, $700 more expensive on DraftKings. Like, they're just daring us to play Julio at this point. So against Carolina, that's one that stands out right away. That's crazy.
By the way, it what's an interesting number here, and I think part of it might just be because it's the Josh Allen, it's the defense he's facing, but Stefan Diggs is among the league leaders in air yards, and he's been dominant so far. At 7K, of all these big names, he kind of feels like, including Amari Cooper, Ridley, Hopkins, and Diggs, that's where he's been in performance-wise. He kind of feels like a little bit of a discount here. But Titans pace also, and then their defense has been pretty good. Are you? I just turned it around. I'm asking you the question.
That's fine. I said you're the co-host today, man. I'm going to have to pay you more.
I've only used Diggs once this year, and I feel like I've been too late to come around on him.
That's the thing, and I was actually going to bring this up because Peter over's at, like, we do a little bit of a talk, obviously, before we build our teams on Sundays, and Peter seems to think that, like, Stefan Diggs is one that people are not reacting to quick enough. Like, it's possible that he has, like, for lack of a better comp, I guess, like a DeAndre Hopkins type of role. It's downfield, it's consistent. Like, they seem to have a lot of chemistry. I don't know. He's 7K. He's expensive for the type. I think that, like, where I've made my mistake is I think of Stefan Diggs about, like, kind of what he was for Minnesota. It's possibly something totally different for Buffalo in some ways, I think, because I think that there's parts of his role that are even a little bit more secure. Like, Minnesota just wanted to run the ball a ton. Like, now Buffalo, I think, is a very good team overall, but they know how to use some of these weapons that they have. Maybe it's helped a little bit that John Brown's been banged up, but I don't know. I'm kind of I've been on board with the Buffalo train, I guess, for most of the season, but I don't really think that Stefan Diggs is necessarily priced out yet, but it is weird to see him ahead of guys like Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, those guys. So I don't know. What do you think overall about, like, his price tag at 7K? It's eye raising.
That's what I'm saying about my coming around too slowly. It's like now I do want to play him, but now I feel like I'm not going to because now of the price. Yeah. Like, I was hesitant of, like, kind of like Josh Allen. Who's he going to go to any given week? Mm-hmm. And it has been very consistent with Stefan Diggs. And now that I feel that it took me too long, now that we have 4 weeks in the books, and now he's 7K.
Yeah, maybe you're just late and you just have to continue to not play him now because you missed that window. Another guy that thankfully, the only time I've played him in quite some time was this week, was Odell Beckham Jr. A lot of people want to hear about him. He's 6,400 now in this spot against Indy. We talked about Kareem Hunt. Obviously, that's the preference for Cleveland from my perspective this week, but are you running it back with some Odell teams?
I'm not going to run it back as much because you asked the question before, and if we didn't get back around to the opponent, I was going to bring it up at some point. But you said, what do we think about the Colts and everything like that? The Colts, I think I said it to you last week, but if I didn't, I did on my podcast or whatever. But the Colts need to be thought of as one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the league. It's time that people get this perception out of their minds or whatever it is that they need. Here's one, it's like Diggs, come around, understand that the Colts deserve to be in that. Oh my gosh, they're facing the Steelers. Oh my gosh, they're facing whoever. The Colts should be in that conversation. So I love Odell Beckham. You know this. He was one of the first names we brought up last week, and you even said I knew it. Odell Beckham was coming last week. Mm-hmm. He jumped $600. He's got the Colts. It really comes down to Baker Mayfield. I don't trust Baker Mayfield. I don't trust Baker Mayfield against the Colts. And honestly, if you look at it, Baker Mayfield kind of had like the Tannehill game. It was not a lot of passing yards. It just hit the touchdown. So I'm off on Beckham this week.
I like the Beckham call quite a bit. I want to ask you this. We're going to talk about all the post-hype sleepers, guys that last week was an interesting week because a lot of these guys that were chalked just completely failed at wide receiver. Also, we'll talk about Cooks, I'm sure, at some point. But the guy I want to talk about first, DJ Moore, in this game that we like, Carolina at Atlanta. He's 6K. Wouldn't it be hilarious if like everyone in the world is on DJ Moore in week 4? Week 5 is the week that he goes off and he's like half the ownership, a 15th of the ownership. Like, I don't know. I think that he's interesting still at 6K. I mean, he's not out of my window for sure.
Here's the problem with DJ Moore. So it's funny, and I'll give credit to Rich Rebar because he tweeted about it this morning. Is my concern for this team, as if anybody wants to go to my preseason pieces about DJ Moore, was because of Teddy Bridgewater. I said Teddy Bridgewater is conservative. He's not aggressive downfield. He's not aggressive just in general. He's been playing very well the last few games. When I said that I was concerned about DJ Moore was volume, and I was concerned for Robbie Anderson because not throwing the ball 15, 20 yards downfield. The interesting thing, and this is what Rich tweeted about, is that DJ Moore's average air yards is 12 or 13. Robbie Anderson's is 8. They're getting it to Robbie Anderson, and Robbie Anderson's doing a ton after the catch. That's what we thought DJ Moore would do, not Robbie Anderson. We thought it would be the reverse. And so the funny part is that the volume I thought was going to hurt Moore, the downfield passing was going to hurt Anderson. Well, Anderson's in the Moore role, so he's the one that's been productive so far. So I understand what you're saying, but until that changes, Anderson just might conceivably be the number one for the foreseeable future on this team.
Yeah, Robbie Anderson, 5,900. It's a great point. Actually, Ben Gretsch was on our Sunday morning show at Line Movement, and he brought up the same thing, that like if you are looking at these two names and thinking you know exactly what the usage is, you might be mistaken if you actually go look at it, because it's been basically what you just said. It's been the opposite. So that's interesting for sure. Let's pivot over to another DJ, another one that I know you like quite a bit. He's a little bit expensive for my taste, but DJ Chark, 6,500 against this Houston team, 27th in the league at defending the deep pass. I'm in on Chark this week already, I think, and I know you're probably on board with this one.
Yeah, DJ Chark is where I said I netted 75 cents. DJ Chark was on a few of those lineups that actually won some money. Funny enough, that also involved Dak Prescott at quarterback. It was pretty easy to win some money when Dak Prescott was your quarterback. But yeah, DJ Chark, I was in on. I'm still on Chark for this price. People got off him so fast, even in seasonal, just because it was. It's funny. I think this is another one I might have said to you, is that he saved his day early in this season with a touchdown, and everybody complained about the yards weren't being there. And it's how many wide receivers are putting up 100 and a touchdown every single week? What we want from number one wide receivers is when you only have 30, 40 yards, you do score, and then you put up 120 without a touchdown, and then sometimes you get both. I think that DJ Chark deserves to be even higher. I think I would put Chark. It's, we're only talking $300-400, but Chark deserves to be right around like Julio Jones and Juju and those type of names, in my opinion. And for what you just mentioned, right now at 65, it's probably going to push some people away at 65. So I'll be in on him again this week.
Yeah, we're seeing some, I guess, ranges of salary that seem kind of enticing right away at running back, but also a wide receiver. Like, I really like this kind of mid 6K range. I like Juju, also 6,700, pretty similar spot. As we're talking about with Chark, 29th in defending the deep pass, the Eagles are. So I think that one's interesting. Any other wide receivers you want to talk about before we move on to tight end?
I think a lot of people are going to be off on the Rams after what happened last week, and I'm always willing to invest in Woods and Kupp. Probably not always the same team, and I haven't dug in yet where Washington's more susceptible, if it's more susceptible underneath or over the top. But either way, Woods and Kupp are always on my radar, mostly because that's a blind spot. There's a perfect one. I always feel like everybody's just kind of like, oh yeah, Woods, Kupp, they're always a solid play. And then nobody plays them because of that, because they're just always like, it's Woods and Kupp.
I just always have concerns with the ADOT overall with Goff.
See?
But I'm with you. Maybe I'm one of those fish that just like ignores that situation when there's still a lot of value there.
It's always there.
Yeah.
I think that one more to go back real quick to Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Boyd has been the guy. There's no question about that. AJ Green's officially not even the second guy. It is T. Higgins now, and T. Higgins at 4,900. I feel like that might push him chalky wise, but I feel the good news is on the flip side. He is facing Baltimore. So if you're going to go with Joe Burrow, if you want to go the triple stack there with him and then Boyd and Higgins gets you really nice savings to do it for 1 week.
Speaking of savings, Jake, let's talk about tight end for a second. How much Adam Trotman did you have last week? Be honest. Come on.
0. I can show you my lineups. I had 0. I missed. So I had Gesicki, which didn't do so well. I had a lot of Schultz, which did do well. And then who was the other one? Oh, the one that killed a lot of my lineups was Logan Thomas. Yeah, I'm officially done with Logan Thomas.
I feel fortunate that I got out of the Logan Thomas thing a couple weeks ago, just because like when it comes down to it, one of the most important things for me at tight end is a high team total, and Washington's never going to have that because of the quarterback play that they have. So catchable balls, like, okay, see you later. I don't care about his air yards. Like, there's good air yards and there's bad air yards. I think that would be under the category of bad air yards for me, at least. I did have some Troutman. I think it was more of a roster construction play. Pricing was tight on DraftKings last week. We had him on our team that we won 50K with. So it depends on the field size, all of those things. I'm not scared to punt at tight end. You guys know that. But this week, week 5, we do have some guys at the top, some familiar faces, of course. We have Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews, both over $6,200 on DraftKings. You have any lean between some of these top guys before we try and find some cheap guys? Because I would imagine we're going to need them.
I would say that if you can get Kittle or Kelsey any given week, to find a way that if you can. After that, I'm I'm very in on Waller until Hunter Renfrow, or sorry, not Hunter Renfrow, Henry Ruggs comes back, because what happens with Ruggs is Ruggs kicks aside Hunter Renfrow, who affected Darren Waller. So right now, where if you look at it, Waller and Renfrow, or this is too many R's, that's the problem. Renfrow is the number one essentially with Darren Waller, and you're asking Zay Jones and Nelson Aguilar to play outside. I'll be over Waller. When you start bringing back Ruggs and start to get him into the mix, and it's going to be now Ruggs, Renfrow, and Waller, I'll be a little bit more concerned. So if that made that clear, I'm in Waller until Ruggs comes back.
I like that. There was a lot of really sharp people on Waller last week. I feel like I was a little bit heavy on Gesicki, which didn't work out a ton. This is, again, another week where it kind of makes some sense to me. Like a tier down below, he's 5K against the San Francisco team we know is banged up. Again, though, just such a low team total. So I might struggle with that one a
200 cheaper.
Bit. 200 cheaper? Who we got?
Smashing Schultz again against the Giants.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. He's 4,800 now, huh?
I mean, that was immediate. How fast did that happen? What was his price 2 weeks ago? I'm going to check real quick.
He was like 3,600.
37 yep. To 45 to 43, and now he's 48.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there it is right there. High team total, guys running a ton of routes, clearly like just having a piece of this offense. Like, I love the idea of just like using your tight end slot with just one of these elite offenses and just not thinking about it, because tight end is just such a dumpster fire. Like last week, even if you played Mark Andrews, you got 20 points? Like, that's not a decent, like, really use of that salary from my perspective. Like, tight end's just been the worst. So yeah, I like the idea of going down a little bit. 4,800 for Dalton Schultz. That's a tougher one. A guy that we've brought up a couple times just because he's always running some deeper routes. Freak athlete, maybe, definitely a large human. Mo Alley-Cox gets in the end zone again. And when do we just stop ignoring this? I don't know. Like, I'm not even like a big fan of the indie side of this game, but I don't know. Should I get stopped right there?
Yeah. You should have ignored him this past week because you got bailed out. What is it? 1 catch on 3 targets or 2 targets? That's why, like, Trey Burton's back now. Like, so if he doesn't get a touchdown, I love Alley-Cox. If you could free Alley-Cox, if you want to put, like, everybody loves their hashtags with free whoever, free Alley-Cox and just let him be the number one and stop screwing around with everybody else. Sure. But we have one of the happiest 12 formation teams in the league running 2 tight ends. And one of the only teams of like 2 or 3 that's actually running 13 with 3 tight ends. So it just comes down to Alley-Cox just not going to have the target consistency until one of them gets kicked aside again. I can't believe they used Trey Burton as much as they did in his first game back.
All right, I've got a guy, Jake, and I'm going to steal him from you because you keep bringing him up each and every week. Jordan Aiken, still 3,300 against Jacksonville, 31st in the league at defending the short area of the field. So I think that one is interesting in the spot with a 30 implied team total. I mean, that's one that's, I mean, keep monitor on it, right? Is he banged up? Did I just butcher that whole thing? He's banged up?
No, he got a concussion.
He came back in the game, didn't he? Or no, he was out for the rest of the game? Because I had some Aiken's teams last week with Watson.
I thought he was out for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that could have been it then. 3,300. We'll see if he makes it through protocol.
Yeah,
then,
your Vikings,
I think that's a great
hit,
spot.
by the way.
What's that?
Those are your Vikings screwing things up.
You always say my Vikings, man. Since when is it my Vikings? I'm not from Minnesota. I do live right across the street from the stadium, so I got that. All right, Jake, you just ruined my cheap tight end. So who you got down there?
He's great. 4K? Like I said, if he's back from a concussion, he's great. You know I love Aikens, especially against Jacksonville.
You do.
But there is no. I mean, I guess you could pivot to Fells if he's out. Fells is very touchdown reliant, but he's only $100 more if there is no
Mhm.
Aikens.